Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted. I appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments, so feel free to leave some constructive criticism, ideas for videos. How you do things is always interesting for me. Or just, questions of any sort are fine. So at the last gem show that I went to, I tried to get some faceted stones that were different shapes than I usually set. And I have this rose quartz that I picked up that I think it's a 14 by 9. And it's rectangular, but it's not an emerald cut like a lot of ones you see that are rectangular. It's kind of a rounded rectangle. And it most resembles to me a cushion cut. Although usually those seem to be square, but this one's kind of a rectangular cushion cut. So I thought I'd do kind of an open setting to really let it get a lot of light. So we'll give that a shot and see how it turns out. I'm going to make a ring out of it. Before we do that, though, I wanted to thank some groups of people. I wanted to thank my patrons over on Patreon. I have two new ones. I have Matt H. and Ken B. Thank you for signing up. I really appreciate your support. I think you'll find that the group over there is super nice and full of all sorts of knowledge and willing to share it. So enjoy getting to know them over there. I also appreciate my previous patrons for all of their support over the past couple of years. Thank you so much for that. My other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 14,700, which is awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for the really nice comments that you leave too. It's nice to know when people let me know that they're getting something out of these. It makes it even more worthwhile to me. So I also appreciate the financial contributions like the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. Those really help with the cost of materials that have gone up so high lately. So thank you for that. With those things being said, let's get started on this project. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks you can get on my merch store. Most of the recent ones that I've created over there that you can get have different charts on the back. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find pretty useful a lot of the time. There's some other different ones. There's a new one that has a ring sizing, how to cut your ring blanks to different lengths. Inside of the books is where I sketch up my design ideas, and I find it super useful to do that. I didn't used to do that, but I get a better result when I do it anymore, I think. Okay, so let me show you the stone here. Got this pretty little rose quartz, and it's, like I said, it's kind of a rectangular cushion cut. And I don't know that I've ever set a rectangular cushion cut before, so it'll be kind of fun. I want to do it so that it gets lots of light. And one time, a long time ago, I did one where I did a tube, and then I slotted the individual pieces of wire that I was going to use for prongs down into the tube. I think I'm going to do that method on this one. I found that to be a good, easy way to get your prongs all in place. So we'll do that, and that'll also leave a lot of light gathering abilities, because I'm going to slot that tube down between the band where it splits like this. I'm going to use 16 gauge square wire here, which is 1.3 millimeters, I believe. And the band I'll make out of 14 gauge square, and that's 1.6 millimeters if I remember right. The tube is 22 gauge, which is 22 gauge sheet, and I made it to be about 4.5 millimeters. I took 4 pieces of 16 gauge square and I taped them together like that to get a rough estimate of how big a tube I need to fit those right in there. And so it's a little bit small for this, so I'll file these down so I can get them to slide right in there. But I made it out of 22 gauge sheet, which is 0.66 millimeters. But I think that's about all we have to do so far. So not a lot of varied materials here, no bezel or anything, so it should be a relatively straightforward piece. We'll see. Sometimes when I say that, it turns out not to be. Okay, so like I said, it's 9 by 14 cushion cut. I'm going to do the prongs kind of on the corners like this. So here's my tube that I made, and I made it quite a bit longer than it needs to be. So I just took, I have a video about making tubes from a long time ago. I'm not sure if it's a great video, but it's from when I first started doing this. I think it probably has good information. But it's not too hard to make tubes. Just cut some sheet to the right length. It helps if you know that pi times diameter equals circumference. So then you can take the diameter of the outside diameter of your tube multiply that times 3.14, and that gives you pretty close to how long of a piece you need to cut to make your tube. So, all right. So I'm going to tape these up just a little bit tighter. I think I'm going to cut them off to the same length here. I think this is pretty close to the size of this, but it's just a bit shy, so I'm going to take the corners off of this just a little bit. Look at that, it goes right in there. Okay, so now I'm going to unwrap these. I'm going to take this, make sure they're in there pretty good. I cut these to be longer than I thought I'd need. I figure if I got this, that's likely going to be long enough, but these are going to be quite a bit longer than that when I bend them out. So. That's going to be pretty close. So let's solder that in like that. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder, which looks like this. And I use a liquid flux that I dribble on or spray on. Okay, so I'll probably be dribbling. I think I'm going to set it like this. Maybe not. That didn't work out very well. Now I have a bunch of solder over here already. I'm just going to flux this and throw a little bit of solder right in the tube, and then we'll heat the whole thing, and hopefully that should get those soldered in there. Let's figure out what size of ring I want to make. I'm going to go with the size 9 here. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces of 14 gauge square, about that long. Cut it to a 9, knowing that it's probably going to end up being about an 8.5, because I'm going to solder it so that it splits in the middle just a little bit and then comes back together. So my first step is going to be to get these perfectly straight after I file the ends. So I guess my second step is to get the wires perfectly straight. Probably close enough. Let's find the center of those two. So that center point is going to be right where this feeds down between them, and we got to figure out how far out we want those to come back together. I don't think too far on this one. Maybe, I don't know, like a centimeter. I want those to be exactly the same on the opposite side. I just got to rotate this. Line up the center point. That should be pretty close. Now, I would use my flat nose pliers like this, or my chain nose, as long as you got a nice sharp edge there. I'm going to bend this right at that center point sharply, just a little bit. Let's do this one the same way. That one a little bit more than the other one. Square wire will have a tendency to twist a little on it. You can see it's not flat anymore. So I'm going to take a moment and get that fixed. Pretty close to the same thing here as far as angle. Now these are going to come back together on the inside edge of that line, like that. And that's pretty close to the width of that thing. So this is going to be going right in there. I think that'll be alright. Okay, so now we have to get these ones to bend back about half as much, since the two of them add together to get us back into a straight line. That. That's probably good enough. Let me make sure they're still flat. They're not perfectly flat, I can tell. And we'll solder those together. I do something called pick soldering. This is where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of my soldering pick, which looks like this. It allows me to place it right where I want. You could just set a few pieces over here, but I usually do it this way because it's quicker for me. So if you're interested, I'll put a link right there for you about a video on how to do that. It's one of those skills that takes it to a different level for you, I think. At least it did for me. Let's go ahead and file these ends roughly flat. I'm going to solder these two ends together. going to be spreading this open just a little bit in order to feed that down in there. You can usually use your chain nose pliers, stick them in there this direction, and just rotate them slightly that way. That's just a skosh too wide, so now it's loose. Let's do this. I'm going to file the bottom so it's a little bit of a taper. That way it'll slide in there easily, and then I can push it the rest of the way down, even if it's tight. Oh, that worked a charm. I think we can just solder that on just like that. So let's do that. I'm just going to balance it over my third hand. Maybe. Let's spread this over a little bit. That shouldn't move too much. Alright, make sure we have plenty of solder. I'm going to make sure those are relatively, situated how I want them to be. Because once they're in there, it'll be much harder to move. There's probably more mass in the band down here. I don't know, it's going to be pretty close on these ones. But the band is always the harder part to get hot. Alright, let's cool that off and see how it looks. Now I'm going to start playing with these things a little bit. I may have to put a ring in here underneath the girdle of the stone, I'm not sure. If I can do it without and still have a secure setting, I'll do it that way, it'll get more light, but if I can't, I'm going to improvise. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the way that the prongs are meeting the edge of the stone, the girdle. I want a flat face facing it, not the corner of the wire. So I'm kind of trying to bend these more this way so they're facing more towards the stone, the flat side on the inside edge. I hope I'm making myself clear. So that's about how high I want it to sit. We'll just have to do some configuration of these prongs to make sure they situate right. I think they're stiff enough to hold this in place just if I cut a notch into them. So I feel like it's time to pickle this. And then I'll do some playing with the geometry of it. And then we'll be able to set the stone after it's polished. I think the challenging part is going to be to get it to sit perpendicular to the band. And then after it's all polished up, I'm going to make a mark right where the girdle is. That was weird. And on each of these prongs, and we'll cut a little notch with a diamond burr in there so that I can bend it over the top of the girdle. But I'm going to let it pickle for now. We'll also cut this off with the saw on the inside to make sure that that's not sticking down in your finger's way. So let's let that pickle for a while. I have everything pretty much cleaned up, and as you can see, I added in a little platform ring. It's just a piece of 18 gauge round wire, and I figured out about where I wanted it to sit on the pavilion of the stone and made a ring just that size and just soldered it in there. And then I cut a couple of notches, actually 4 notches I should say, right where the girdle is going to sit. So we'll get that in there hopefully. I have these kind of positioned where I want them to. I'm going to push them down as hard as I can without cracking the stone. And then I'm going to cut them off about midway up the girdle facet, which is the facets between the table and the girdle of the stone here. So like that. That one just a little too long. The last thing I will do The last thing I'll do is I'll take the Dremel with an abrasive white wheel and taper that down and then I'll use a blue fine wheel to smooth them out. So I'll be taking some pictures at the end. Hopefully they will show this off. So, all right. All right, well that was the open rectangular cushion cut ring. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd also love it if you checked out my channel page. I have almost 400 videos now. I've been doing 3 a week for the past almost 3 years now, and I've accumulated quite a bit of content here for you. And there's lots of different skill levels involved there. There's some beginning there's quite a few beginning videos, there's some intermediate ones, some advanced ones, there's lots of ideas, there's different techniques, all sorts of good information here. So check out a few of those videos and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Don't forget to hit the video description as well. There's important links in there. There's a link to my merch page if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea books I showed you at the beginning. There's a link to my ebook which I wrote, which was a tutorial guide for the 2023 videos that I produced. That's a great resource. And there's a link to my Patreon if you want to check that out. There's a link to Pepe Tools, to which I'm an affiliate. If you want to get yourself some nice tools, check those out too. But either way, come back and visit again. I appreciate you stopping by. Take care. Happy silversmithing.